We had a great time last time.
Joan,
We saw a lot of-
stand up on the stage
Really glad.
in front. There you go.
Okay, we have this memorial for Don, and we're going to start with a song and then a poem, and then we're going to do some memories. And we'll kind of go in chronological order, and if you have something you'd like to say, we would really appreciate it. If you don't want to, that's perfectly okay. And if you're willing to come and stand here or sit here, it would even be helpful because we are filming this for the Florida people. Okay? We're going to start. This is Mike's brother, Dan, if you don't know him.
Hey, Dan.
Nice
Well,
to see
John,
you all.
Dan.
Let's get started off with
Thank you
the
so
song.
much. Appreciate it. I'm Joan's very most favorite person in the world, but I'm also her favorite brother-in-law for over 50-something years. Just tell him, Joan. So I'll go on. So anyway, Joan requested in this very room.
Danny, step over here in front
Oh,
of
okay,
the
sorry, Joan.
You got to stand over there. There you
Okay.
go. Okay, a little over further. There you go.
Got it right there?
Go ahead.
Anyway, I hope that's not recorded. So anyway, it's an honor to be here. This song is written by Ron and Carol Harris. They did the words. They're a husband and wife team, so, and the music. So anyway, it goes like this if you've never heard it. In this very room, there's quite enough love for one like me. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for one like me. And there's quite enough hope and quite enough power to chase away any gloom. For Jesus, Lord Jesus, is in this very room. And in this very room, there's quite enough love for all of us. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all of us. And there's quite enough hope and quite enough power to chase away any gloom. For Jesus, Lord Jesus, is in this very room. And in this very room, there's quite enough love for all the world. And in this very room, there's quite enough joy for all the world. And there's quite enough hope, and our God has the power to chase away any gloom. For Jesus and Donnie are in this very room. Thank you.
Go ahead.
I don't know if you know, but Maureen's been writing poetry for years. In fact, she's published some poems, and she wanted to write one in tribute to Don. Yep.
Sure. I have lots of things I can say about Don since I was the oldest and he was the only boy. But we're going to start off nice. This was Odyssey. I spy him sometimes in the corner of my mind, the little boy I knew, running and laughing and teasing, flitting among the sunlight and shadows. And I know I'll miss the little things the most. Always a phone call on my birthday, or just to touch base more frequently in the past few years. Endless stories of his Bellevue days, tales of his beloved childhood and all the friends he played with in the woods, in the streets, and on the playing fields. His favorite teenage buddies and all, and that remain friends yet today, well into middle age now. His memories of running alone through the dark alleys of Bellevue on his way to serve evening benediction, all at 8 years of age. I remember the big things too. His generous offer to help out a relative in need, being an important partner through our mom's many illnesses. Don was always full of news of the children and grandchildren, and later in life his love of fishing and pets and children in Florida. A recent visit, the tourist crowds and a late night drink at a street-side cafe, stopping to compare pet stories with the passerbys. One last birthday card delivered the day he died. So sad after all these years to never buy a birthday card for a brother again. It's time to say goodbye to a brother and a friend and a lifetime of memories stretching out forever in my mind. We'll miss you, Don.
We wanted to give a little bit of structure to this, so we're going to kind of go in chronological order and ask you if you would like to say something about Don at that time, if you would please. If you want to stay there, that's fine. If you'd be willing to come in front of the camera, that would even be better, but it's up to you. Did anyone ever ask you if you were happy when you were a kid?
No.
As Mike would say, happy is one of the 7 dwarfs. Maureen feels that we 3 girls, she, Pat, and I, were raised with benign neglect. We were loved and cared for, but we were not the center of the universe. Don, however, was the only boy and the baby for 9 years, and he had a very happy childhood. Basically, that's because nobody ever asked him to do anything. We did all the work.
That's right.
We're not mad. I only have a few early memories of Don when he was little. When he ruined my birthday by cutting himself with a razor blade and getting all the attention. When he ruined my Christmas by running around taking pictures of my naked tiny tear doll. When he ruined our Easter by setting our grandma's bathroom on fire. You hear the pattern here. That's all the early memories of Don until we moved to Bellevue, and eventually that's where the fun began. Running the streets, smoking old cigarette butts in the woods, and being a pyromaniac in training. One day, Mom and Dad had the nerve to go out, and Don swatted me with a kitchen towel, caught the pilot light, and set the stove on fire. I feel that part of Don's problems was the rowdy Bellevue boys that he hung out with, especially the Walterman twins. I was going to ask if any of his Bellevue friends have anything they want to say, but Tonya, I think you're it.
I remember the first time I saw Don, he came up to Bellevue, came up to Van Vost. He lived on Grandview. And he was talking and doing this, and one of the kids said, "Look, why don't you skate on your own hill?" and try to say, well, you know, he became almost part of the family. He and my brothers were very much same age, always did things, as you saw maybe from that one film. He was a quarterback on our football team when we played the hated lower Van Vost team in football, in Sandlot football. So that was always great. I remember, and I think Joan alluded to it, he would grab his mother's cigarettes and go down in the woods and smoke them with my brothers. And I'm sure Vivian was wondering, what the heck? I must be smoking a lot more than I used to. Anyway, she did that. One time I was invited over, and brought my chemistry set with me. And he and I made a stink bomb and hydrogen sulfide all over the room. And I think that might have been the last time I ever was invited over to the Scales place. Well, one thing that Don did introduce me to was his gawky older sister. Well, actually, they're both pretty gawky, but his gawky older sister. And, you know, nothing there, that's for sure. At any rate, when he left to Bellevue to go to some place called Groesbeck, whatever that is. But anyway, when he went to Groesbeck, I was really, you know, sort of sad, really missed him. But it really turned out nice because we kept in contact. We'd see each other once in a while. And then I remember I saw his gawky older sister, and she didn't look so gawky. Yeah, long story short, we wound up getting married, so then he became my brother-in-law. So, you know, from almost like a brother hanging out on Van Vost to a brother. Don always said some of the happiest days of his life were hanging with the boys and in Van Vost and playing sports. So I think you really enjoyed that. So, thank you.
There were some good moments with Don. We played Haunted House in the Attic, and then we moved on to saying Mass. Of course, you know who got to be the priest who gave out communion, don't you? Finally, feminism reared its puny little head, and I said, hey, I want to be the priest. So Don quit the religious life, and he went on to less saintly endeavors. When Don was in the 6th grade, he left his beloved Bellevue and moved to the big city of Groesbeck. I always hated that name, Groesbeck. Don loved his grade school and his high school years with his good friends Barry, Herb, Frank, Johnny, and Tommy Schmidt. These boys had the strange habit of dating all the same girls. There was Vicky, Sandy, Debbie, Kathy, Carolyn. It was like a revolving door. I remember when he quit dating Carolyn, he went to her dad's house. Her dad was something of a religious nut, and he had a picture of the Pope on the back of the toilet. Don said that cramped his style. He wasn't going there anymore. Would any of Don's Groesbeck friends like to share any memories?
I'll talk about some of those girlfriends.
So loud.
And some of those,
Would you mind coming here?
some of those long walks up to Montford Heights, to College Hill, to North College Hill with Tommy and Don, because we didn't have a car. So we would walk from Groesbeck, and all I would be saying is, are we there yet? But they had it all planned out, who they were going to see, when they were going to see him, and you're right, it was between the two of them. I'll say that.
Two of them.
I was new. I was just getting into that. But no, that wasn't that. A couple of things about Don and what Tony was talking about. He loved fishing. He talked me into one evening. We didn't have anything to do, and I was driving at that time. I just started driving, and he talked me into going down to the river. He said there was some real big catfish down there, and he knew where they were, down around Bellevue. So we pack up all our fishing gear, we throw it in, it's getting dark, and we're going down there, and he goes, don't worry about it, I know exactly where we're going. We got our flashlights. We're setting up, we cast out, we can't see nothing. And we looked at each other and we go, are we crazy? Let's go get a beer. So we packed everything back up and we went back to Groesbeck.
Were you old enough to get a beer?
Yes, I was driving.
Okay.
Didn't really answer your question.
But anyway, and the athletics is another thing. Don loved to play basketball. He loved softball. And I don't know about being the quarterback. I mean, that must have been
It was a rough night.
interesting. But as far as basketball, he was a hell of a forward. He played center. And he loved to mix it up. He was thin, but he didn't care. He just loved to play. And I think my senior year, this is all CYO stuff, and he was a junior. I think we made it second in the city that year. And we really enjoyed it. I enjoyed him. And I need to tell you one other thing. The first day I met Don, I had just moved into Chesswood. And this is a story he's told Barry and Herb. I just moved in, and my parents would drop me off at the new house to water the lawn. I think we've all been there before. Somebody's got to do it, and it's usually the oldest one. I'm sitting on the front porch, and I got a hose in my hand, and I'm watering the front yard. I'm being left there for probably an hour and a half, 2 hours. And up comes this tall, skinny guy, and he comes up, and he stands in the corner of my yard. It takes a couple steps. I go, whoa! You're walking on my Steve! He turned around and he walked away. And that's one of the famous stories of Don he's got. He goes out, and be honest, I don't think we were ever apart that far after that. We went through a lot of our first dates, first this, first that. And I'm going to miss him.
Yeah.
He was a good guy. That's all I got.
Thank you. Anybody else over there?
Are we in high school or grade school?
Either. You're out of high school. I hate to break it to you.
Well, I try to pick my brain to come up with humorous stories, and things like that, but I just remember meeting him in grade school, not the specifics of when I met him, but I've known him since grade school and know Tommy Smith at the time. And I can remember going to the improvement ground and playing basketball with Don. I can remember all through high school and college age going and playing basketball. Don was really good at basketball. I was not very good, but I would go and shoot, and I guess I developed a love for basketball, even though I was really not that good. And I gave him the nickname Skyhook. I guess that was either in high school or early college. I had worked someplace where some guy called stuff Skyhook or whatever, and I started calling him that because he was, really good. He'd go up, make baskets, almost dunk. I never seen him dunk, but almost dunk. And then high school, somebody, I don't know if it was John or who, said we dated a lot of the same girls. In fact, I dated his wife Kathy before he dated his wife Kathy. I knew her from high school.
You dated his cousin Vicky, that a lot of y'all know.
Vicky Moore.
Vicky Hill.
Vicky Hill, I dated Vicky Hill. Now you gotta remember, my wife's sitting over there.
He didn't like any of them, Barb, none of them.
Right. But did Don date Vicky Hill?
No, but you.
I thought we were talking about which girls we both dated.
Okay.
There were about a half a
Don
dozen
knew
girls.
her, he dated her.
I would date, and then he would date, and then down the road a ways, we would double date, but not with the same girls. I just remember a guy that was always positive and not argumentative. I could go on about how we develop a relationship over time. I mean, I knew him from grade school. In high school, we did a lot together. College, we did a lot together. After we got to raising families, we kept in touch, do things several times a year. Then we moved, Barb and I moved to Texas and then to Illinois. We moved back, got back with the same relationship, but again, it was with family and all of that. As time went on, as you know, he went to Florida. I saw him probably 10 or 12 times down in Florida. Talked to him on the phone every so often. At a later point, about 6 years ago, 5 years ago, I had open heart surgery, and the guy was great. As soon as he found out, he called me every day for several weeks. And after that, I've talked to him every week for the last however long it's been. Always concerned. And so I love the guy.
And I was really shocked when Herb called and told me that he had died, because I had called him that morning because it was his birthday. We always called each other on our birthdays. Mine's 6 days after his. And so I was kind of shocked. But anyways, I'm not sure what else to say.
Thank you very much.
I think I'm up next.
Okay.
So, Don was a friend to me longer than any other person, because he actually introduced me to John and Barry. So, I go to high school in 1962. Where's Maddie? I was trying to explain it to her. There were horses and buggies back then. So, Don always delighted when we met a new person. He would introduce me as his long friend, and we were friends because I was the second last R and he was the first S, and we all had to sit in alphabetical order. So we couldn't help but be with each other every day, right? So as I was thinking about this, as it got into the late 60s and we're all developing who we're going to be later in life, we're going to school, I realized that Don was with me at just about every juncture of my life when I made a big decision. Beginning with Debbie, my wife, okay? So as time went on, Don would, we'd go out and play basketball at the Friars Club on Friday night. Then we'd either head to someplace in Clifton or someplace out in Prospect to continue the evening. So, hey Sue, last week we were on the phone with Sue, and she said, you have to tell everybody about the Mud Club. I said, what are you talking about, Sue? The Mud Club, M-U-D. Oh, you mean the Mug Club? M-U-G, Mud Club, okay. So if we headed down to Clifton, we'd go to the Mud Club, or we'd go out to Groesbeck to the Tiki Club. So one night we're down at the Mud Club, and who shows up? This lady, okay? So I meet Debbie, supposedly. As time went on, though, people would ask us where we met. And I would say, well, we met at the Mud Club. And she said, no, we met at Parkmore drive-thru out in Finneytown, but you were too drunk to remember that. Well, Don was there on both those occasions. And as time went on, I realized she was having a great time telling everybody we met at Parkmore. So I just kept telling everybody we met at the Mud Club. Well, on our 50th wedding anniversary, I admitted that she was right the whole time. So I had too much fun. But I had too much fun doing that. But Don kept that secret for me all those years. Never did tell Debbie. Okay? So, just a thousand memories. And we're just going to do the fun ones, right? So, among other things, we wind up going to a spring break in Florida. Okay? Again, we're talking late 60s. So Frank Teton was, and Don picked me up in my driveway. It was snowing. We headed to Fort Lauderdale. So to this day, I'm not exactly sure what happened down there the whole time. I do remember a beer truck being turned over in the main intersection. I'm not sure if a student did that or if Budweiser was just giving away free beer to students. But I remember the beer truck, and the night the police came to the hotel, and somebody threw a beer bottle off the roof and it hit the police car. And that wasn't very good. But there was this guy in the room next to us. And Don and I talked about this last winter. John Chuchek. And Don Ludlow will tell these stories. But John Chuchek. So we're trying to figure out how to stay away from the police. So we go in John Chuchek's room. John's probably 55 years old. And we're thinking back, what was he doing down there with all of us kids? So we were trying to get protection. We might have been stupid. I'm not sure. Well, we were pretty stupid. What else I want to talk about? Oh, and I forgot about this. Barry mentioned Vicki Moore, or did you? Somebody mentioned Vicki Moore. Mm-hmm. So Don and I were on a double date at the Groesbeck Annual Fair.
I remember that.
And him and Vicki were in the, what do you call it? Goes back and forth.
Tilt-a-whirl.
Tilt-a-whirl.
And it threw them right out, and they hit the gate, iron gate, right in front of us. Threw them right out of the thing.
Yep.
So each time back and forth, Vicki was getting higher and higher and higher. Finally, just threw them both out. They hit the rail and took them off to the life support. But they were both okay.
Wow.
One last, well, I got maybe two. he always loved to tell this one. And you can help me with this. So Don and Debbie, they decide they're going to throw a surprise birthday party for me. You remember that, right?
Yeah.
And I'm going to try to do this how Don would have done it. So he said, sorry, I'm going to be Don. So I'm going to pick up Debbie, and I go down this gravel driveway, I go to this house. This guy comes to the front door, and he's in his underwear. He's thinking, Debbie's got a pretty weird family. His dad's coming to the front door in his underwear, right? And he said, I'm looking for Debbie. Well, he said, she's next door. Okay. Know where this is going? You probably heard this story. So, door closes, and he goes down this sidewalk. There's another door there, right? Knocks on the door. Here comes the same guy, still wearing his underwear. And he said, no, not you dumb. Da, 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 da. And so then he goes down and picks up Debbie, and then they take off. And so, where were you going? He's probably taking you to the party or something.
We were, trying to get
Trying to go to the party. And here they see me coming the other direction, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. They see me coming the other direction, my red Pontiac. And Don, according to Don, he says, Debbie jumps down onto the floor and says, get down, Don, get down, Don. Don's driving the car.
They have to remember that.
So last story, and I'm done. So among other things, of course, we were hanging out all the time. It used to be that the college all-star would play National Football League game on July 4th. So Don and I go down to a hospital down in Clifton, pick up Frank, and we're going to head off to Houston Woods for 4th of July weekend. So we get as far as Oxford. Of course, we go into the bars up there, watch the football game, hang out. By the time we leave the bar, it's 11:30, something like that. So we head out to Houston Woods in the dark. We put up a tent, and it rains that night. Yeah, in the middle of the night. We weren't real bright. So we go, we put up the tent. Next morning we get up, and the guy next door in the other tent, an older guy, goes to Frank. He says, Frank, you got to put that firewood inside your tent so that it's dry in the morning. Okay? If Don's telling this story now, he says, Frank says, I'm going to take care of this. So Frank goes, gets the wet wood, puts it in the fire pit, goes and draws some gasoline out of the tank, puts it on the fire pit, and lights. Of course, if you ever see gasoline, it goes poof, like an explosion. So Frank comes over and says, I showed him. Anyway, we had a great time. Nobody ever got hurt. And so appreciate Joan putting it on. And Sue, good seeing you.
Thank you. Any of the Garrels want to say anything? Debbie, I bet you got a few things to say. I'm still wondering about the guy in his underwear. How did he get in two different places?
It was his house. There were two front entrances.
Oh, two, okay.
There was two front entrances.
Gotcha.
It was the same house.
Johnny,
Yeah.
I remember thinking that Don liked Johnny Mathis because he had a lot of Johnny Mathis albums. And I don't know if we were maybe in John's basement and they were playing songs in it, but that's what I remembered about Don. And I said something to John a couple years ago about it, and he said, I don't think those were Don's albums. I think they were Joni's. And they would just play
I like
them
Johnny Mathis.
to impress. Yeah, there you go. He was right.
Took your records.
Okay. Well, Don continued to harass us girls until one day, this is a true story, it is funny. He was sound asleep, sprawled out on the floor. Don had very hairy legs. You need to know that. I happened to, Carmen and I were there, and I spotted an electric razor, and I thought, I owe him a lot of things.
Payback.
So, yeah, payback. Okay, so I plugged the thing in and went after him, and the cord was too short. I happen to have some Nair. Y'all know what Nair is?
Yes.
Hair remover. So Carmen and I were
Good Lord.
putting it on his legs, and he surprisingly woke up, and he kind of panicked, so he took a towel and started rubbing at it, which is the worst thing you can do. You can imagine the pattern of hair that was missing on him. He was mad about that one for years. Well, life goes on, and Maureen was ready to graduate from high school. She got a partial scholarship, but Dad said he couldn't afford books because the boy, blessed Don, needed to go to college. He would eventually have to support a family. So the education die was cast, and Don went to college, and Maureen did not at that time. However, Don partied his way through the first semester at UC and ended up out of college quicker than he got in. Not to worry, Don saw the light and returned as a serious finance student. But Maureen's still mad about that. Don eventually graduated from college and he got several prestigious jobs. As you know, he married Kathy Ryan and he had 3 beautiful children. We spent many holidays at their houses, especially the one on Pepper Pike in Westchester. Don and we all agreed we loved that house and we loved all the good memories there. Does anyone want to say anything about those years?
I remember, I think it was probably the last year that you were on that street maybe. And it was an unusual Christmas because my dad had just passed away. So my mom was there and she wasn't feeling real well. But the Padawanas were there. And I think that's the first time I met Maureen. And who else was there? It was a different crowd than usual. And that just stands out with me. That may have been Mom's last Christmas.
It was.
Yeah.
And Brian had that mullet.
Yes,
That
yes.
mullet. Brian, I loved that hair. Nobody else liked it, but I loved it. That was cute. Something, Louis, I remember about Laura. She had some very strange habits when she was a little girl. One of them was she changed her clothes 2 or 3 times an hour. She kept changing her clothes. Every time you'd see her, she had a different set of clothes on. Sometimes she'd put them on top of the other. Does Maddie do that too?
She says no.
Laura was good at layering because she didn't want to take them off every time. But also, she had this compulsion when she had to go to the bathroom. She'd run through the house. She'd go, "Gotta go bathroom, gotta go bathroom." Get out of the way. I still do that. And Andy, you were such a cute little guy. You had this grin. You were born with this grin from ear to ear, and your dad would pick you up and carry you and say, "Smile at them," so they could see your grin. I think that's why you were so good in theater when you were in high school. You were used to an audience. Let's see. Once Don moved to Florida and married Sue, our families didn't see much of each other. Don was beyond happy when Laura and Maddie moved down to Florida also. He really enjoyed seeing Maddie grow up. He especially treasured the times when his family and friends went down to visit him, as we all know. Anyone want to talk about Florida years? I know some of us didn't see him too often then. In recent years, Don and I didn't communicate much, but when Mike became ill, Don called weekly and we became very close, as we used to be when we were kids. When we weren't talking about conspiracy theories, Don shared how much he loved nature and how at peace he was. He said he wasn't religious, but he felt he was becoming very spiritual. Don came here the week after Mike's funeral, and he had a lovely time. He saw his good friends, and we spent a lot of time with him. None of us knew it was our last time. So today we gathered to celebrate his life. He thought he would die young because of his heart problems. He outlived his parents and all 4 of his grandparents. He was happy with his life, he was proud of his kids, and he loved his family, his dogs, and his life in Florida. Any other memories anybody wants to say? Okay, Danny has a nice song.
They're sick of me yet? Are they sick of me yet or what? So, Joan, it's always really difficult to sing a cappella in front of friends especially, but Joan asked me to sing the Old Irish Blessing, so some of you may know it. So anyway, you'll know the words. So it's, may the road rise to meet you, may the wind be always at your back, the sun shine warm upon your face, the rains fall soft upon your fields, and until we meet again, may God, may God, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and give you peace. May the road rise to meet you. May the wind be always at your back. The sun shine warm upon your face. The rains fall soft upon your fields. And until we meet again, may God, hold you in the palm of his hand. May God hold Donnie in the palm of his hand. Thank you.
You're dismissed.
Thank you. Great send-off.
Joni, thank you so much